Hello everybody and welcome back to Q&A Wednesdays. We've got a good selection of questions for you today, but before we start, just wanted to remind you that you can support the channel via Patreon. Head over to www.patreon.com/Coombe Valley Campers, or have you seen our new range of merch? We've got new hat designs now and we've got new stickers coming up, and we're very soon going to be bringing out a t-shirt. So two ways you can support the channel, one being Patreon, two is buying some merch. Head over to www.coomevalleycampers.co.uk and see the new bits and pieces we've got there. But yes, thank you very much. All the support's been fantastic. Let's crack straight on with it. So as ever, the questions that have come through to us via Patreon are the ones that we answer first, and they're the ones that are guaranteed to be answered. So if you are a Patreon supporter, go over to the website, type in your question, and we will answer it straight away. The first one being from Andy Muller. Hi Leigh, fantastic video on the sound deadening and insulating the floor of the T3. This is exactly the stage I'm at with Dolly, our T2 Holdsworth camper. My question is this: after laying and fixing all the various layers of Dodo, the final part in the floor itself is the Pro Van flooring. You said that this acts as an underlay, so would you need to, or in fact want to, lay a sheet of plywood down before your chosen floor covering? If you could just go over the products for the specific areas again, that would be awesome. Right, Andy, so on the T3 video where we did the sound deadening and floor insulation, I hope I didn't confuse anybody there, because I did sound deadening and insulation for not only the floor, but the rear bulkhead as well, which you will have in a T2 as well. So let me just go over the things you can do to your floor and your bulkhead before you start laying a floor down. Now, what we would normally do in a, say for example, a T3, but in fact, let me start again. 3 methods. First is just sound deadening, and that is the likes of your Dodo Hex mat or your Silent Coat 2mm deadening. The second and more comprehensive method is the sound deadening and then a foam van liner, much as the van liner you'd see us stick to the sides of vehicles. Alternatively, you can just go ahead and lay down the Dead Mat Duo, which is what we tend to do now actually. On the floor, we just put Dead Mat Duo because it's got 2 layers in one, and it lays really nice and flush when we screw a ply floor down onto it. Method number 3 is deadening and the sound barrier. Now, we did that on the rear bulkhead, not necessarily on the floor, but the rear bulkhead, because it's more of a sound deadener than an insulator. If you were going to use the Pro Van floor on the floor, though, I would suggest you lay some ply battens or some wooden battens in the lower parts of the ribs of the floor, fill in between those ribs with your chosen sound deadening and insulation, and then lay a ply floor on top of those battens, so you've got no threat of screwing through the floor or anything like that. So number 1, deadening alone. Number 2, deadening and a foam liner or the Dead Mat Duo. Number 3 is the deadening and the sound barrier. So I hope that's cleared that up for you, Andy. The second question is from Leigh Smirthwaite. Hi Leigh, my 63 plate T5 has a factory fit VW fiberglass fixed high top. Can you explain 1, how you would insulate this please, and 2, how you would attach any panelling, plywood or otherwise? i.e., is it best to use some kind of polyurethane bond or similar rather than trying to fix onto the supports? Many thanks, Leigh. So in terms of a fixed fiberglass roof, I will suggest 2 ways to do that. So you'll have an internal support structure on your roof already existing, so a steel inner structure, and then you'll have just the fiberglass. Now what I would do if you wanted to ply line the inside of the roof is to supplement the the inner structure with some wooden battens. So I would bond wooden battens to the fiberglass roof in support of those steel structures. Once you're happy with that inner wooden framework that's bonded to the fiberglass, I would then fill up the areas in between, much like the floor, with sound deadening and insulation, and then you would have a really good solid flat structure to put your ply panel onto, and you'll be able to screw that into the wooden battens and into the metal inner structure. The other way of doing this is just to lay say a van liner, the self-adhesive Dodo van liner onto the fiberglass itself. The adhesive is very, very good, and we've done this on a couple of T3 roofs in the past, fiberglass roofs in the past. We actually stick the sound deadener directly to the fiberglass itself, and then we don't actually ply panel it, we'll just carpet the entire inner structure. Mainly because it's a nice soft surface. Say if you're up there and you banged your head, for example, instead of having a metal or ply surface, it's actually got that layer of the soft van liner throughout, and then it's got the carpet on top of it, so it's all one uniform colour all the way through. I hope that's cleared that up for you. Next question is Eric Bubb. He says, where would I purchase the brackets to fit a bed above the garage, and what are they called? I saw them on eBay, went back to purchase them and can no longer find them. They were sheet metal and riveted onto the longitudinal struts in the van. One was fixed either side and a beam, for a word, was supported by them. Now, I've seen a couple of methods to do it. Let me rewind for a second. What I'm assuming you've got here is a larger van, such as a Sprinter or a Crafter, and what you're wanting to do is build a permanent bed platform about midway up your van, and then you're going to use the area underneath as a garage. So you'll open up the back doors, for example, of your vehicle, there'll be a garage space underneath, and then the bed will be on top. And what you're after is the metal supports that go between both sides of the van and create that bed frame. There are a few methods to do it. In fact, there is a company on Instagram called @IOW Northeast or something like that. They're based in the Isle of Wight, basically, and they sell a bed support structure for the inside of Crafters and Sprinters. If you don't have a Crafter or Sprinter, you can get those bed structures custom made at your local engineering shop or fabrication shop. I'm sure they wouldn't charge you a massive amount to do that. But what I've seen, and it's quite a common practice actually in terms of van conversions, more so on a budget, is actually using an IKEA part of a bed frame to actually span that structure. Now on IKEA beds, what they have is the external bed frame. Say on a big double bed, they've got the external bed frame, and in the centre of the bed, they have a metal support. And that is called a scorver. A proper IKEA name. It's called the scorver, and what people do is buy 4, 5 or even 6 of these scorver supports because they are retractable. Depending on which width you want, you can actually retract or detract. Yes, you can change the length of these scorver beams to whichever width you want to fit your vehicle. Now, according to the quick research I've done, the IKEA frames are called Scorver mid-beam central supports, and the brackets are called IKEA Hemnes Malm Bruxelles. Again, proper IKEA names for you. I will leave some links below in the description for those. But yeah, they're very simple metal brackets that will screw, weld, or preferably rivet or even riv nut onto those internal metal framework of the van. And then you would extend your scorver beams as and where you need them on those supports. And I hope that's answered the question for you. So yes, we've gone for the brackets and the garage, the brackets for the bed frame, brackets for the bed beams on top of the garage area. And that's all there is today on Patreon. Nice quick one for us, but we will now go on to the one question on Instagram and the one question from Facebook. Again, Patreon questions are always answered, and if you send us a question on Instagram or Facebook, I will pick one from each. Our first question then is, bear with us 1 second, on Instagram. This is a question by @Ark Overland. Since the rule changes and your in-depth video on how and what is needed to register a van conversion as a camper van, do you know anyone that has successfully done so? Short question, no. The DVLA have been very, very strict in their guidelines that they have set out. We covered this in October 2019, is that right, Ali? It was October, wasn't it? And we got a huge response on the video, but we've not had one person come back yet to say that they've successfully classified their van conversion as a motorhome under the new guidelines. I've even been following some of the Facebook groups where people are self-building their own vans and following every instruction to the letter for the DVLA, and it still comes back as van with windows, or quote, van with windows. That is what a regular T4 or T5 or T6 van, even with all the regulations ticked, is now classed as a van with windows. And that's been the same for the larger Fiat Ducatos, the Sprinters and the Crafters as well. It's such a shame, it really is. But I believe the only people or the only companies or the only individuals that are now getting these classifications changed are those who have physically made a coach-built motorhome. Do excuse the phone. 1 second. Oh no. Wow. Hopefully that one didn't answer. So thank you @Ark Overland for your question. Quick answer. Now the phone stopped ringing. The last question is on Facebook, and this is from Sarah Goodhew, another customer of ours again. So thank you, Sarah. It says, "Hi Leigh, for a novice with Bernard, our T25 Comet. What kit do I need, and how would I set about tackling small bits of surface rust?" Love these Q&As. I'm not a painter by trade. And I know there's going to be people out there that will have their own opinion on what you need to tackle small bits and pieces of rust. However, what I would suggest is, if you are just doing small bits of remedial paintwork and rust, rectifying some rust, I would suggest you get a power tool with a wire brush attachment to try and grind away as much of that, or move away as much of that rust as possible. Then I would use a good rust converter such as Q-Rust to neutralize the rust in that panel. Then a body filler over the top of that to smooth over the area that has rusted. Then a decent primer and the top coat. Now, being small areas, you will probably be using what's known as a rattle can or an aerosol can, and I would suggest you, if you wanted an exact colour match for your vehicle, I would suggest removing a piece of trim from your vehicle, such as a petrol cap or any other small part of body that you can remove. Take that to the paint suppliers, and then they should be able to match the paint you require in a rattle can. I will end that with that any rust issues you should sort professionally. But if you do need to do some remedial paint rectification and or paint fixing in the meantime, I would suggest actually you get out there on YouTube again actually and just really take a look at some of these other channels, because there are people out there that will give you loads of good advice. So that's it for today. Thank you everyone for your questions, and we shall be back next week with our next Q&A Wednesday. I'll see you then. Bye bye.